I have spent my entire life online, basically. I had since a very young age, I had a computer. I was the stereotypical nerd kid. I'd play video games. I wouldn't go outside. I wouldn't go to parties. I would just be at home playing, whatever, RuneScape or chatting online, and then online poker. And so I feel like I've been in the metaverse and living in the metaverse for 25 years already. And so my entire life feels like it's led up to this. And I feel like I've never felt more at home than being able to make a living and do everything basically virtually, and then supplement that with like in real life and face-to-face events.
Hello everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. I'm so stoked for this episode. It is a very familiar face here with me. I am joined by the one and only Zeneca33, who of course is on this show all the time for our weekly recap episodes, for the Moment of Zeneca segment that he regularly does here on the show. But this is special because Zeneca, you're here today as my interview guest. I'm going to grill you, ask you all the questions.
Terrified.
Thanks so much for coming on. Yeah,
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. It's exciting to be back on in a different form.
Different capacity. It's so funny because I went back and re-listened to your first appearance on this show, your first appearance ever, which was again an episode in which I interviewed you. And it was almost a year ago today.
Wild.
This is coming out probably November 9th, and November 18th is when you came on the podcast last year.
That is
so this is some beautiful symmetry. Look how far we've come, growing up.
Seriously. Yeah.
You and me.
You're taking over the world. You're doing documentaries around everywhere, and it's awesome. Yeah.
I feel so lucky, as I know you do too. It's also funny listening back because I guess the market was like a little down on November 18th and I was like calling it a bear, and I'm like listening being like, oh, sweetie, that's adorable. You thought you were in the bear. You were at the top. You were like, this was like literally virtually the peak. So that's precious.
Yeah.
When it comes to NFTs, convenience often wins over security, despite scams being everywhere. Brands and artists have no other choice by complying with big marketplace terms and weak security because no good alternative exists, which is what prompted Ledger to fix the problems of NFTs themselves and launch Ledger Market. The Ledger Market provides an end-to-end secure NFT experience for brands, artists, and users, enabling true ownership and control over NFT assets, from minting to storing. Ledger Market secures NFT projects via Ledger Enterprise, keeping you protected from phishing attacks and scams. And the market directs users to Ledger Live, where they can transact with a contract directly, giving clear signing details instead of blind signing and praying. Don't trust, verify with clear signing from Ledger Market. Stay up to date on the latest drops and marketplace updates by following Ledger on Twitter and joining the Ledger Open Discord, which is linked in the show notes below. BUENO is the NFT toolkit you need to launch your digital collectible on the blockchain without coding. Every step of the NFT creation process, from generation to mint, all taken care of by the BUENO NFT toolkit. With BUENO, you can load up your art layers, reorder the layers, tinker with rarity, everything you need to make your NFT project a reality. BUENO even allows you to mint your tokens on the blockchain with zero code and offers advanced minting logic like linking allow lists, airdropping tokens, and on-chain royalty configuration. As a part of their launchpad, you'll get access to forums to run surveys, email collection, and build your pre-sale list to make sure you are hooked into your own community. BUENO is full of powerful tools you need to build the most expressive NFT project possible. So go to bueno.art and start building your own collections today.
Cool. So we're going to, later in the show, we'll do some fun stuff where I talk about some of the projects you shouted out back then, and we take a look at where they are now, and we'll do some reminiscing in that sense. But let's just start. You've had some big announcements coming out of Zenacademy recently, and just congratulations first of all. I think it's a project that has really stood the test of time. You had launched it about a year ago, and I think it's just held up so incredibly well. Floor price is higher. Not that we want to measure things on floor price, but like floor price is up a little bit from where it was. Like I just think to be where we are in this market and to have your project holding up as well as it is just so impressive. So why don't you just, for folks who maybe are haven't been paying close attention, review like what is the goal, what is the vision for Zenacademy? What are you trying to achieve there?
Absolutely. So when I launched it a year ago, and I'm curious to go back and listen as well what I said, but basically it was sort of an experiment because I knew I wanted to be more full-time in crypto, in Web3 and NFTs. And as a content creator, I was trying to explore how can I sort of do that. You know, I'm not an artist, I'm not a game designer, I'm not a developer, I'm not sort of someone who might have the traditional talents or skills for creating a PFP project or an NFT project. PFPs were like what everyone was doing back then. Memberships were sort of relatively new. But I thought, you know, content was the thing that people sort of came to know me for, and education was something that I was writing a lot about and that the space desperately needed. So I thought, well, what if I can combine the two and create something that is just something that, again, it was very experimental at the time. And I said, I don't know exactly what this is going to be, but I want to be focusing on creating content, educating people, informing people, and creating a community out of it. Because, I mean, Web3 is all about community. It's such a trite, cliche word at this point, community, but there's a reason for that. And I think it's really powerful to have people come together and band together in the way that we see all the time. So anyway, long story short, I decided to launch Zen Academy as a place to really help onboard new people to NFTs and crypto and Web3. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. It was just a Discord server to begin with. And from there, over the last 12 months, we've really grown. The team has gone from literally just me to now there's 20 of us working on Zen Academy in one form or another, creating multiple courses and different types of educational content, different pieces of media. And now we're like beginning to set our sights on like the next 6-12 months and beyond. And at the same time as launching Zen Academy, there was basically this thing called the 333 Club. So there was like 2 tiers of membership. One was sort of like the education focused, onboarding focus, and the 333 Club was more for sort of advisory and consulting services. So I was doing a bunch of advising at the time, and basically there was way more inbound than I could handle. There was, you know, I think 80 people that had filled out a form when I was like, you know, is anyone looking to hire me as an advisor? And I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. I can't possibly work with this many people. Maybe there's some middle ground where I can sell an NFT as sort of a membership that gets some level of access to advisory services, but also creates a smaller, close-knit community of founders that can then help each other out. And yeah, that's the high level of what we were then, and we can get into where we're going into the future soon. But it's been a hell of a journey over the last year.
Yeah, it's so funny. Zeneca, I remember when you launched my favorite way ever, probably still, which was you were like, hey, look, this is kind of a lot of money and I don't really know what we're doing with this. So like, no hard feelings if you don't want to buy this NFT. Like, it was such the anti-marketing strategy, which was, I love, because as a contrarian, like we were in such a hype cycle where every project was launching, and, you know, I don't know, I guess Pixelmon was a couple months later, right? Or a few months later, but it was like just that phase of like, buy this, it's gonna moon, and like, oh my God, like we're, you know, going everywhere. And your style of just like sliding and being like, yeah, look, it's like 3 ETH for the one, it's 0.3 for the other. Like, I don't know exactly what this is gonna turn into. So like, you don't have to buy it. I was like, yes.
Yeah. I just, it was 0.03 for the other, actually. Small correction. It was very cheap.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh wait, so the floor is way higher now. It's 0.3 for your...
Yeah, it's somewhere between 0.3, 0.4. So it's like...
Yeah, it's like 0.34 when I looked last night. Of course it is. 10x. 10x on Zen Academy. Again, we don't care that much about floor prices.
We don't look at floor.
But it's a testament to you have driven value for your community, because in your case, this isn't a project that really is purely speculative, right? Like if you're not creating value in your Discord, if you're not driving value for the holders in this concrete way where they feel like they're getting something out of being a part of your community, like they will just sell, because you're not promising maybe one day we turn into Disney, maybe one day, you know, like I think a lot of these other projects can maintain floor prices that aren't tied to fundamentals. I think it's much harder for a project like yours to not be sort of based on fundamental value that's being driven, which is, so in that sense, like having the floor where it is really does say something, which doesn't mean if it drops a bit, like, you know, you failed and you haven't kept driving value. But I do think there's a distinction there.
Yeah.
When you were initially launching, you're kind of talking about this, but like, was it a matter of, hey, I'm writing about NFTs, I'm deep in this space, I really want to understand it from a launching it perspective? Or was it like, hey, this is the best way that I'll be able to get and sustain value out of the services I want to be providing? Like, what was the kind of philosophical impulse from your end?
It was a bit of both of those. It was, I want to learn what it's like to launch a project. I want to be full-time in NFTs and Web3 and creating content. And up until that time, that was all I was doing. I didn't have another job, and I was trading NFTs and I was creating content. And I was like things were going well on the trading side because bull market last year. But if I had relied solely on that, I'd probably be crying right now because the market has tanked so much. And it was a way to sort of build something bigger and do something. I mean, the real reason is that trading JPEGs was just not that fulfilling and rewarding. Like my background before this was being a professional poker player for about 17 years. And that's all I ever did. And like the one thing the world does not need is professional poker players. We're basically parasites on society. And it's a terrible, terrible way to live your life. I mean, it's not. It's fun, but it's like you never once feel like you're like adding to society and contributing anything. And then flipping JPEGs is kind of the same. It's like you're trading coins and it's very PvP and it's like, you're trying to out trade others and make money. And at the same time, I was like writing a newsletter and tweeting and like people were sort of reading these things and I had my podcast and they were like reaching out to me and going, oh, thank you, that helped me. Or thank you for writing this. And I was like, what's this warm, fuzzy feeling inside when you're helping others? It's nice. And so I really wanted to lean heavily into that. And so this was like my attempt to sort of pivot and move more into that direction. And that was a real impetus, I would say.
Is your poker background the reason you can seemingly work at like literally any hour of the day? Because poker players are often like working late into the night, I feel like, in tournaments and things.
I think so. Like I was already on a sleep schedule because there was this just before getting into NFTs, I was playing on this one poker site that had a tournament that started at 3 a.m. local time. And so my sleep schedule was already crazy. And I just continued that because a lot of NFT drops happen at 3 a.m. local is like, evening, night in America, and all of NFT stuff happens on US times.
As a quick sidebar, are you following the I guess it's in chess, but aren't there some cheating scandals?
There's cheating in everything now. Yeah, there's chess, there's poker, there's fishing. I'm sure there's more, but I loosely followed it, but I didn't look. I don't have a strong opinion on it.
You don't have strong feelings on it.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Zen Academy. So I'm curious if you feel like, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. So the central mission of sort of educating people into NFTs. I am increasingly becoming curious if the NFT industry as we conceptualize it today, which is this like funny bubble of people who are really into like JPEGs and the like weird drama that we manufacture in our own little bubble and to what extent that form of NFTs is going to continue to grow and how much, as opposed to things like Starbucks come and do NFTs. And so, yes, the whole world someday is going to own an NFT because they're going to have Starbucks rewards points, or it's going to be because of Reddit or this and that. But they're never really going to migrate into like JPEG trading and or like owning doodles or these kind of other things that are in our world. And so really there's almost like two worlds that are sprouting up that are independent from each other. Your education feels like it's, yes, educating people on NFTs and blockchain, but it feels like it hews more towards our bubble world in some way. And push back if you think I'm wrong. What do you think the size of this market becomes? Like how much further do we have to grow in our sort of like bubble world?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought this up because it's something I've been thinking a lot about lately as well. And I think it's incredible and just fantastic what Reddit has done, what Starbucks is doing. And I think that's how we get, quote unquote mainstream adoption. That's how we get tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of people into this whole world of owning digital assets. And, they're calling them digital assets, digital avatars, digital collectibles. But I think that there's still a pretty key and distinct difference between that and actual NFTs on a decentralized blockchain. And I think that what Reddit and Starbucks are doing is in large part getting people into the mindset of owning digital assets. It's very Web 2.5. You can use a credit card to buy. Initially, the assets are like, they will hold custody of them. And then if you choose, you can withdraw them to your own wallet. And it's fantastic. It's like brilliant for onboarding people. But I think it doesn't quite educate people about what this is actually all about. Like if we really get to the core of it and think about cryptocurrencies and decentralized blockchains and reducing centralized power, that is what we need to educate people on. And that is what, like, there's something philosophically important about having full custody of your assets and having full ownership and be able to do whatever you want with them without having to rely on Reddit or Starbucks or the US government or whoever. And I think that is a key part of education that these other massive brands are not quite tackling right now. And that's great because they don't need to, and it's because it's complicated. So I think we're going to live in this interesting Web 2.5 era for it could be decades. It will be a long time because it takes a massive, because it is so difficult to onboard people to like having your own wallet, having a seed phrase, having full ownership of it. It's really difficult to comprehend, and most people are not going to be able to wrap their head around it. And so I think that we need to keep educating people who want to learn about this stuff, and every day more people are coming around. Like you've seen Reddit onboarded a ton of people, and then some percentage of those people came over to sort of Twitter and started asking questions, and they're like, hey, I'm curious about this whole NFT thing, and I never looked into crypto before. What's it about? And I think being able to educate them on like the meat of this is still something supremely important. And I think where we live at Zen Academy, it's somewhere in like we have a foot in both camps where we want to onboard people at a base level and just sort of make it as easy as possible, but then also have enough substance and content that for the people that really want to, sink their teeth in and understand like the autonomy and power it has to like have full ownership of your assets and not have to rely on a third party. We want to be able to offer those sort of that learning journey as well.
I think I can live in too black of a white of a headspace about it, where I'm like, everybody's heard about this stuff at this point. If they don't like it, it's because they like are never gonna get the like underpinnings. They'll end up using NFTs one day, but they like clearly didn't resonate with the and that's not true at all. I mean, I have a good friend who's super educated. She works in Hollywood, like at a major studio. And I used the term Web3 with her the other day, and she was like, "Wait, like what's Web3?" And I was like, "Oh my God, no! There's all these people who just literally don't care and are paying no attention at all. And it's not just like hermits. Like she's like a very much a part of the world. Like she just like now she's not on social media, so that's that. She's only sort of part of the world. But what have you found to work best in terms of educating people as these people come over from Reddit? Like where do you start folks?
Yeah, so we launched something about 3 weeks ago. It's called 30 Days of NFTs. And I found this is sort of like when I launched Zen Academy, I had this big picture, goal, dream, vision where everyone had, at that point last year, we had our friends and our family members coming to us asking about NFTs and crypto. And, it was on the news everywhere and people were making money. And they were like, hey, this looks interesting. Can you teach me? And how do I get into it? And we'd all take a deep sigh and be like, well, okay, this is going to be 1,000 questions and I got to hold your hand. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be great if we could just send people to one spot and that would be it? And I think it took a year, but almost a year. That's what 30daysofnfts.com is, where people can go, they can sign up, and it's an email course. It's a free email course. So they enter their email address, and then every day for the next 30 days, they'll receive sort of like a 3 to 5 minute read in really simple, plain English. It's like very basic and easy to understand. What is an NFT? What is a blockchain? What is a wallet? How do you set it up? And then over 30 days, hopefully people have like a base understanding of having a wallet and knowing what NFTs are. And every day we go through like 2 or 3 bits of terminology, because there's so many phrases in this world that people like alpha and wagme and like just GM and like, it's a whole other language, and like trying to explain, it's so difficult to explain everything to people. So that is where I send people now, and we've gotten really good feedback in a few weeks. We've got thousands of people that have signed up already, which is, I don't know, it's blown me away.
Yeah, wow. This is a stupid question because it's sort of anathema to I feel like the whole point of the thing, but is there an option if you sign up to then just like get all the emails at once or read it all at once? As somebody who like, once I decide I want to learn about something, like, I'm not your bite-sized girl. So I get this probably just isn't the product for me. And there's a reason that I'm sitting here and we're doing this and I'm not, slowly one by one, but like, can they just go and consume it all at once?
Not at the moment, but we're working on either a PDF or a website that'll have it all there. And yeah, probably in the next 1 to 2 months that will be available. It is sort of, we don't want to encourage that too much because, as you said, it's sort of the whole thing with NFTs and crypto is it can be very overwhelming. So if you just bombard people with information, it can just be like information overload. People throw up their hands and be like, this is too much. Whereas if every day it's just like 3 minute read, it's like, oh, I get that. And then they come back the next day and like, oh, I kind of get that now. And it builds on top of each other. But yeah, certainly there are people that really just want to dig their teeth in, and we will have that option. And we're also going to translate it into, like, we've had so many people reach out and say, can I translate this into Spanish or into Portuguese or Japanese? And we're like, absolutely. But we want to just finalize and make sure like there's still some tweaks we need to make to it. But yeah.
Did you see Matt Levine's Bloomberg like takeover about crypto?
I saw it. I didn't read it myself, but I saw people talking about it, and it seemed like people were praising it a lot.
Oh my God, it's so good. I said this on the recap episode recently, but Matt Levine is like one of my favorite writers. I've literally been reading his columns since like 2016. So it's this funny worlds colliding. It's this like funny world colliding thing for me almost. Cause like, he's like who I go to for financial news, and he's covered crypto a lot for, a while, but it was almost like, oh my God, to have this like big profile on crypto in Bloomberg, second time in Bloomberg's history that they've ever dedicated an entire issue to like one thing and one author, be my favorite writer. I was like, oh my gosh, it's really good. It is so amazing how it's like embarrassing. I'm like, oh shit, I'm learning stuff. I'm like, how come this guy who mostly covers just like normal financial markets is like better at talking about this issue than I am? And like, it's supposed to be my thing. Worth the read. If you are somebody who wants like it all at once, he just does an amazing job breaking it down. Okay, let's get into some of the recent announcements with Zen Academy. I think they're super interesting and I really want to probe into them a little bit more. Maybe let's start with, you haven't taken VC money and you've indicated that your goal is not to. I don't think you've said like, I will never, but you're really trying not to. Walk me through that decision process.
Yeah. I mean, the goal is not to, never say never, but like I would say less than 1% chance, because we're a community first project. And I think once you take VC money, it sort of has the potential to misalign incentives when now all of a sudden there's this external stakeholder investor that is looking for profit. That's what VCs do. They invest trying to make a return, whether it's in 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. They're looking for a big payoff and profit on their investment. And I think that it gets tricky when you're an NFT project that is all about community, when the community is buying NFTs or trading NFTs, and that's a revenue stream. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, well, we've got this community. Should we just sell them more NFTs? We can generate more profit. And I think we've seen that a lot with a lot of projects where they do second drops, third drops, fourth drops, and generate tons and tons of money. And then the holders are left thinking, well, what am I buying? What am I holding? And there's been this bit of a mismatch where people maybe think that they're investing in a project, but really they're not. They're buying an NFT, and then the other investors, and then people are like, what is our role in this ecosystem? And I think I have nothing against VCs and VC funding, and it depends on what you're trying to build and who you're trying to build it for. And I think that for a lot of projects, it makes a lot of sense. If you're trying to be the next Disney, you're going to need VC funding. If you're trying to build some sort of incredible, massive tech product that requires 10 engineers full-time, it's probably a good idea to get VC funding to get the funding, but also the connections, the network, and all that kind of stuff. But if, for us, we're really building sort of from the ground up without a specific thing that we're building towards. So we're not trying to be the next Disney. We're not trying to build a product that we think everyone is definitely going to use. We're trying to build a community that helps each other out, that we can empower, that we can provide opportunities to, and see where that takes us. And I think that without taking on VC funding, we have a lot more flexibility, because profit is not our number one priority. We are prioritized on people and prioritizing just getting good people together, aligning our incentives, and doing and achieving great things. And I think that, it gets tricky when VC funding gets involved. And I guess like to a further extent, I'm effectively leveraging my personal brand, or leveraging both the Zeneca brand and the Zen Academy brand. And as that grows, I want to be able to sort of reward the people that are part of the community along for the ride, and not necessarily have to think about returning profit to an outside investor.
You mentioned, I think earlier, that you have 20 people on the team now. 20.
It's 6 to 7 full time, and then like the rest part time in terms of moderators and other jobs. But yeah,
still a lot of people, and I imagine a good portion of those get paid in some ways. This, of course. Yeah. So this lends itself obviously to this leads us directly to revenue. Like if you're not taking VC money, you need money from elsewhere. You haven't gone the route of 6 more drops to continue to extract from the community, which is amazing. The royalty conversation, royalties are very up in the air. Like this is, the heart of things you have to think about and be strategic around. How have you been funding the project, and how do you think about continuing to have the funds you need to do everything you want to do?
So we had the initial sale about a year ago, and that has helped fund us. Basically, that plus the royalties up until now has helped fund us. We have about 10 to 12 months of runway left. So we're not sort of in dire straits. We're not needing a bunch of money right now. And over the last few months, I've been rethinking revenue and how I basically am trying to figure out this question: how do we support ourselves as a business without taking on VC funding and without extracting from our community, on and on and on. And that's where some of the other things in our entire ecosystem come into play. So obviously content is a large part of what I do and what we do at Zen Academy. And I think that there's a lot of potential ways to generate revenue through content. And like, we have 2 podcasts, we're launching a 3rd one soon. We have 3 newsletters. We have a YouTube channel. We're going on Instagram and TikTok and everywhere. And there's a lot of ways you can generate revenue through like ethical affiliate links or sponsorships and things like that support the business, which then mean that we can take some of that money or all of that money to pay the people on staff to help, do things for our community and not have to rely on sort of charging our community. And I think there's the nice flywheel where then if the community is watching and consuming our content, they're going to tell their friends because they know that, well, if more people watch it, then we might benefit, and it works really symbiotically. And then the content acts as this top of the funnel thing as well, where now we're reaching new audiences that might learn about Zen Academy from there, and they might want to buy one of our NFTs, and that might make the floor price go up. As much as I say we don't look at floor price, everyone looks at floor price, and it's nice to be able to do that, and it's nice for the holders as well. So that's one way. The other is we have reserved a significant portion of supply that we intend on selling via an application process. So we'll get into the mechanics soon, but people talk about royalties going to zero and how do you sort of generate revenue. And one of the counter arguments was, well, why don't you just reserve supply and then sell them? And then the counter to that was, well, if the team starts selling, everyone's going to panic and be like, oh my God, the price, they know something. But I think if we're intentional about our plans and say, hey, we're going to sell 1,000, 1,200 tokens via an application process to people that we sort of want to be in our community, and they can probably get in at a price cheaper than buying on the open market. I think it's a way for us to generate revenue. It allows us to not double dip and charge our existing community additional. So those are some plans. And then we have like medium to longer term things. Like we're building a Web3 consultancy firm, and that is going to generate a lot of revenue as well, because there's a ton of money in advising and consulting. And now I've got a lot of experience over the last 12 to 15 months doing it, both to third parties as well as through the 333 Club. And there's so many brands and celebrities and people wanting to get into Web3 that need help. Like, I'm talking to people at Fortune 500 companies who say, well, we've got 20, 30, 40 people on a team and we need to get them up to speed on Web3. Can you come in and run a workshop for us? And, that's 10, 15, 20 grand that you could potentially make in a few, 5, 10 hours of work. And that feeds into the entire ecosystem, and that is used to support the staff. And it's just, we're really building a business and leveraging the content and the brands to do it in a way that doesn't rely on VC funding and doesn't rely on secondary royalties or selling further NFTs. And like, we have royalties, and it's nice that they're coming in and it helps the business. And I hope they stick around, but we're not like naive enough to expect that they'll be around forever. And, we also, potentially might do another drop in the future in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years. If we keep growing, then maybe there's room for another NFT or a subscription service. And I don't know, that's a lot, but like we've put a lot of thought into it, basically.
Can you give us, I don't know how public you've been about this. I guess the numbers are probably public, right? Because we could look this all up. Like, what have royalties been like for over the past year? And do you have projections on what you anticipate them to look like over the next 12 months, or even ballpark figures on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can tell you what they've been like, but they're so dependent on market conditions. So during the earlier part of the year in the bullish market, we were probably getting 20 to 50 ETH, 30 to 50 ETH a month in royalties, which was more than enough to support everything. Now it's probably in the last 2 months or 3 months, it's been close to like the 10 to 25 range. But now that we've announced things have picked up again. And so it's pretty decent still. And like, it's enough to almost support payroll. And we have a treasury, of course, that gets us there. And then that's not even looking at the other revenue streams that we have and that we're kicking off soon. So, yeah, if we can stick around with 10, 20 ETH a month of royalties, that will go a long way. But if not, we are building in a way that I think will be just fine.
You're describing a world that is very familiar to me, because in some ways what you're saying is like, hey, we're a media company, that's growing in our media capacities. We then have a consulting arm to that. I mean, it's like the Packy McCormick model in some way, like media kind of like consulting. And then like, maybe you have an investment arm. It's a model that I've thought a ton about, as, maybe you can imagine, is like, okay, what do I want this podcast to become? Do I want to grow this into a broader, just like really kind of a media company and then launch a consulting firm? I mean, very similar. The notable thing, of course, being that you started with this NFT launch. And in some ways, I feel like you severely underpriced your consulting services. I even commented on this on the podcast we did a year ago, where I was like, this is like 3 ETH is a bargain for essentially lifetime access to advice from you. Like that's that was like $10,000 at the time, whatever it was. Like that's something that, to your point, you can charge in a minute for as a top tier consultant. Would you recommend this model to other people, or what would be the conditions under which you would recommend, launch your NFT project, sort of offer this like lifetime suite of benefits and then back into these other revenue models versus maybe what are the conditions in which you would not recommend that for someone?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it depends on how much upfront capital and revenue you need at the time. And if you need that, then it makes more sense. I didn't really need it at the time, and I did it. It was really an experiment. I was just like, let's see how this goes and what this turns into. And I was like, just really excited to launch something and then have a community to build alongside with for the future. So I think it does this really, like, if you can sell NFTs to people and like have that audience already established, there's this beautiful, interesting thing with NFTs where it aligns incentives, where now they want you to succeed because it's also in their best interests. Because if you succeed, that means the price of their token or their membership increases as well, because it's a lot more valuable to have lifetime access to someone or some company that's providing consulting services to Fortune 500 companies than to someone who disappears and leaves the space in 6 months and isn't even around and is basically worthless. So now all of a sudden you have a community that are sort of cheering you on and helping you out, giving good constructive criticism and feedback and guidance and support. And it's really symbiotic. So, I mean, everyone is different. I think the one thing I would recommend is start small and you can always scale up later. And so it's been a tricky thing to balance since day one, because we launched both at the same time. We had the 333 Club, which is 333 people. And then we have Zen Academy, which is almost 8,000 tokens, 2 very different price points, and trying to balance that. It's been challenging at times, but it's been interesting trying to navigate those waters. And yeah, just my general advice to everyone is start small when it comes to, if you're going to release NFTs, start with a small supply. You can always scale up. It's very difficult to scale down.
Does the lifetime commitment of this scare you?
Not really. I mean, I was fairly clear. It's a lifetime commitment as long as I'm in NFTs and Web3. And I intend to be in this for decades. And this is something I want to make this my life's mission. And I am making this my life's mission. This is something until I retire, if I retire, whenever that is, there will be some sort of commitment, some sort of membership tier. But that is constantly growing and evolving. So currently right now, Zen Academy and the 333 Club and the PFP project, it's obviously very closely connected to me, and they're inextricably linked. In 5-10 years, I hope for this to be something much, much larger and a giant self-sustaining organism where, yes, the 333 membership will still, I'll be, allocating some amount of time to advise people and help people out and give some services. But I imagine that there would be so much other things, so many other things going on in the ecosystem, so much other value that people can derive from it, that I would sort of feel less pressure to sort of feel like, oh, I have to turn up every single day to sort of be in the Discord and answer people and spend my time like 20 hours a week or 10 hours a week on people, because we've built this massive thing and now there's tremendous value in this membership. If there's millions of people in the ecosystem and there's only 333 of these tokens, that inherently is going to be higher value and exclusive. And I think that it's going to evolve as time goes on. And I'm evolving with it. The community's evolving with it. And I think we're going to be able to do so one of the things I want to do is turn 333 into a DAO. And that is obviously DAOs are fascinating, but also complicated and tricky and messy right now. And so I'm in no rush. This is probably a few years into the future, just until DAOs and legal structures get figured out. But once that happens, then all of a sudden I am not the be all and end all. This is a thing where we all have sort of an equal say. I have one token, like that's what I have in my personal capacity. Everyone will have one token, and then I will be one cog in the wheel. Obviously, I'll be still a key part of that, but then perhaps as a DAO, we can, build our own revenue streams and models, and then all of a sudden, the DAO is this self-sustaining organism within the Zen Academy ecosystem and everything else. So, it scared me when I first launched it. I remember the day after mint, I was like, oh, what have I done? But now I no longer feel that way. It really, honestly, it excites me.
Part of these questions are selfish because I think about this all the time. And I am just so terrified. I'm in two minds about it, right? Like, one, I hear you say, yeah, like, until I retire, if I retire, like decades. And I'm like, oh my God, like how can anybody confidently feel like they know what they're going to want to do in 10 or 20 years, which is maybe partly a peculiarity to like the way my brain is, which is like a little ADD and kind of likes having a lot of different things, or just like, like, I don't know, in 10 years, who the hell am I going to be and what am I going to want to be doing? On the other hand, my other mind about it is what has always been true about myself, and given your career and things is like probably true about you, which is like, I'm always going to be non-traditional. Like, something has gone very wrong in my life if I go and start work, like go to iBanking, or like, you know what I mean? Like if I am like, if the next time you see me, I'm at like Goldman or something, you know what I mean? Like things have gone very badly. They did not go to plan. And so if that's the kind of person you are, where you don't plan on just like having your typical job or whatever, then in theory, you're always going to be doing interesting things that can lend themselves to rewarding holders of a token, where even if you as Zeneca decided, oh, my new passion is over here, XYZ, there's probably inevitably ways that you can incorporate a community of people into that. And so that's the other side of me, is like, that's how I am, and so it's hard to imagine me ever not doing something that in some way I could bring a community along with, which makes me slightly more inclined. Is that sort of how you've thought 100%. Of it, or comforted yourselves in your more panicky moments?
Yeah, it's basically, even if I do decide to do something slightly different or go off in another direction, there will always be ways to reward the community, bring them along for the ride. And honestly, like they're my friends now. It's like it's a small, close-knit community, and I've met so many of them in person at events, and I look forward to meeting more. And we just get together, and it's not like this relationship where I feel like everyone is asking me like, what can you give me and how can I get value, and like when moon and when utility and like that. It's like, it's been maybe this is because we did like an application process a year ago, back before they were popular. And I sort of found people that I thought were just sort of in this for the long term, good humans, and understood sort of that this was an experiment and this was a journey. And now we get together and hang out, and some people launch awesome projects. One of them, KPR project, launched this week. That was a 333 member behind it. And like there's cool stuff happening in there, and we have our own little initiatives and things going on, but we're just, if people ask, is it an alpha club? We're memeing most of the time. People are just having fun in there. And there's a Zeneca FUD channel, and people just have fun fudding me. And it's just fun. And it's like, if you get the right community, it's less lonely as well. Like NFTs, crypto, this whole space can be lonely at time, and having a community, having a team, having all of this, it makes it just more enjoyable. So instead of it being this fearful thing about, oh, what have I got myself into in the future? It's like, oh, this is awesome. Now I get to do this with people that I like, and they get to sort of, if I'm successful, they get to be successful too. And it's sort of like, now we all win together, rather than it's lonely at the top, right? If you're just all by yourself and just all out for yourself and thinking about how to maximize your profit, and not sort of having a community or people to share it with, what kind of life is that?
I mean, it obviously is such a testament to you and the vibes and the standards you set in the community, because so you had the application process for the initial 333 club, but that's not Soulbound, and what we'll talk about, because I think you're launching Soulbound tokens, right? So so they could sell those, right? And then you're not, there's not like an application process for anybody who wants to buy one of these tokens. So then you're just getting what you're getting after that kind of initial crop of folks who come in, and to be able to maintain that energy is I think all due to you and what you put out in, into the world.
It's, yeah, I mean, well, thank you. And it's like a, what's the word? It's like a I can't think of the phrase.
Self-fulfilling prophecy?
Kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, self-regulating, maybe self-regulating is the word, where we've had a couple instances where someone buys a token. I remember very vividly, actually. Someone bought a token, and then I had someone DM me from the existing community and be like, oh, this person, they're like, all they do is they're an alpha caller hunter. They're just going to be a fly on the wall. They're going to like take our alpha and then go share it to other servers. And like, this is not a good person for the community. And I was like, well, I mean, that's part of decentralization and Web3. There's not much we can do about it. And then I think like 2 or 3 days later, they sold their token at like a 1 ETH loss, because I think they realized, well, they're not actually just hunting alpha in the server. This is just a community of people that are, helping each other out. And it was just a very different vibe. So I think the people that maybe want something different or that aren't quite right for the community will buy in, buy out.
Self-select out.
Self-select. Yeah. There we go. That's the word. Yeah.
At the risk of being like fairly fixated with this, not that anybody follows me enough to know how much I actually talk and think about this realistically, but are you an extrovert or an introvert?
I am an introvert.
See, this is what blows me away, because I'm also an introvert, which people are like, oh, you're like, no. But like my version of introversion is that like I can't, like big group servers, also just even communicating online, I find much scarier, weirdly, than communicating face to face. Like I definitely feel like I thrive on like, you can see my facial expression. You can tell I'm making a joke. You can hear my intonation. Like you can tell that I'm not an idiot. And like, but then when I have to type it and all those other factors go away, my like anxiety is higher. The idea of having to talk to 8,000 people is like exhausting, having to like constantly be checking Discord. I mean, I've said this before, you respond on Discord so fast. And I'm like, are there 8 of you? Like, how are you doing this? And as an introvert, that to me sounds so exhausting. Why does it work for you?
I think I'm the opposite type of introvert to you, where I thrive online. I thrive, typing and via text. And when it comes to sort of speaking engagements, the first time I did a speaking engagement a few months ago, I was petrified because I hadn't publicly spoken since high school. And, being in parts of being in large crowds it was terrifying. Now I'm like, used to it and okay with it, but like it's very draining. And so if I have a long day at a conference and then we get to the end of the day and like my team is like, hey, we're going out, you want to come? And I'm like, no, I just need to be in my room alone for 12 hours. And but when it comes to being online, like I have spent my entire life online. Basically, I had since a very young age, I had a computer. I was the stereotypical nerd kid. I'd play video games. I wouldn't go outside. I wouldn't go to parties. I would just be at home playing, whatever, RuneScape or chatting online, and then online poker. And so online forums. And I feel like I've been in the metaverse and living in the metaverse for 25 years already. And so my entire life feels like it's led up to this. And I feel like I've never felt more at home than being able to make a living and do everything basically virtually, and then supplement that with, it's sort of like, supplement that with like in real life and face-to-face events. And like we do a lot of video calls and Zoom calls and things like that. We have founders calls and things that we sort of, obviously advisory calls that are over video calls as well. But that is it took me a long time to get used to that. Like it took me 3 months before I even joined a Twitter space. I felt like anxious and anxiety. I was like, I'm an introvert. I don't want to. And then it took me a while before I even spoke on a Twitter space. And then like that is what doesn't come naturally to me. So it's a learning process. Whereas typing, texting, Discord, that's right up my wheelhouse.
And I guess that makes sense. So, but even putting the social anxiety piece aside, like for me, I just need a tremendous amount of time, like alone, not talking to people, period. Right. No matter what. And that's what feels the always on element of Discord and the internet is what makes me like, as that feels like anti-introvert. I'm like, no, I need like nobody to bother me for like at least 6 hours a day. You know what I mean? Where I can like, whether I'm working or I'm just putting in headphones and walking around, and the idea that I have 5,000 people who like feel like they should be entitled to me to some extent at all times, or even if it's not coming from them, like I would feel beholden to, I'm like, that sounds so exhausting and draining to me, even if it's typing, that's still me having to like be on for somebody else in a way that I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally get that. I think that it felt like that a little bit for the first 2-3 months, but again, the community is self-sustaining already to a certain extent and self-selecting at this point and I've been quite vocal and I'm very honest and upfront about the fact that burnout is real and we all need to take breaks and we should prioritize mental health. So if I don't reply for a few days, if I am away from the Discord for a few days, if an email goes unresponded or I miss DMs, I think no one really cares that much. They understand that things are chaotic and crazy and I'm just always sort of practicing what I preach, I guess. And so sometimes, like last night, actually, I had this giant to-do list of things. I was like, I need to get this done. All these emails that have been stacking up in DMs, and I was like, I'm just going to go to sleep. I just can't right now. And like, it's going to be okay. Tomorrow it's going to be fine, and people will understand, and people do understand.
Mm-hmm. All right, fair enough. I'll drop it because I feel like this is a selfish line of questioning, but. Okay, more updates on the Zen Academy side. So I feel like there's a big set of announcements this week, which as we're recording this is November 4th. This will come out probably next week. First of all, you're moving from 1155s to 721s from a token standard perspective. Can you explain what that really means and functionally the purpose that serves?
There's two main standards for NFTs, ERC 721 and ERC 1155. And what the vast majority of people think and know of as NFTs and what the vast majority of NFTs are the ERC 721s, where each individual token is a separate token and they can be unique or they can be the same. So you can have like a membership club. I think Proof is a good example where all the Proof passes, they're exactly the same, but they're ERC 721. So you go to OpenSea and they see them individually. ERC 1155 is basically editions. So you have the same NFT and then you have like 10 editions, 100 editions, 1,000 editions. So sometimes you see artists release editions and they'll, instead of doing a bunch of different singular NFTs, they just do one and then they make editions of it. The benefits of the ERC 1155 is that gas is cheaper. It's just like a little more simple. And especially when we launched in November last year, gas was crazy. Like it was costing $200. This was before the optimizations, and when gas was high, it was like $200 a mint. And like it's crazy to think about, but that was like the normal, and people were still minting all the time back then. And with ERC 1155s, we were able to make it like $5 to $10. And it didn't matter if you minted 1 or if you minted 100. The gas was going to be the same. That was one of the other benefits. And this was before ERC 721A was really popularized. So that was the reason we went with it. But it has drawbacks. It makes it less difficult to it doesn't track as well in sort of analytics software. You can't really see it. It doesn't pop up on any of the trending tools. You can't see it on any of the It's just difficult for other contracts to interact with, because instead of having unique individual owners, it's like there's one contract that says who the owners are, and there's just some technical limitations with it. So we want to effectively upgrade our existing tokens into these ERC 721 formats, and so we'll be doing that this month in November, both the 333 Club Pass and the Zen Academy Genesis tokens. And we decided to use this as an opportunity so we're launching a PFP project, and we've been building towards that for a while, and we've been trying to figure out the tokenomics and how do we do it? Do we sort of airdrop one to everyone and then do a public sale? And there's so many ways that other projects have done it, but we didn't want to like significantly inflate supply, because that rarely works out well unless you're, Bored Apes with a 60 ETH floor, then you can justify, 20,000 mutants. But given where we are, we thought, well, maybe there's some way to go from the Genesis tokens all the way to the PFP without like bumping up supply too much. And that's basically what we're doing. So people will be able to burn their Genesis token, the ERC 1155, and they're going to receive a ERC 721 chest. So we're calling them Zen chests. They're basically Renga black boxes, Clone X vials, that kind of thing, where when it comes to the time to mint and reveal the PFP, which is we're aiming for Q1 2023, people will be able to burn their chest and get their PFP all for free, just paying gas throughout the process. And that's the gist of it.
So it sounds like the impetus of moving to 721s wasn't to make them PFPs. That was sort of in the works, independently.
Yeah.
Is that because, chiefly because you want to be showing up on like your DApp radars or your OpenSea top listings or like those kinds of like aggregators that talk about projects?
That's definitely one of the big reasons. It's just, I mean, there are a lot of benefits when it comes to, say, even just simple things like if we want to do a snapshot of our holders to airdrop something potentially, you have to write like custom code for ERC 1155s, whereas 721s, I think you can go to pre-mint and they just have a button that you click because it's really simple and straightforward. So just from a technical perspective, we definitely wanted to move to ERC 721s and
Very interested to hear, obviously anybody who's currently in Zen Academy gets one of these PFPs, but you're also going to have a public element to this. So you are going to expand sort of membership into Zen Academy.
Slightly.
Does the PFP like stand for membership in Zen Academy? So you will increase that a little bit. Can you give us specific numbers? Like how many public?
I can. Let me just talk big picture for a second. So currently within Zen Academy, we have the 333 club and then everything else. So the Zen Academy membership is literally everyone else. And this has been conflicting at times because that everyone else includes people that are like pure beginners and have never this is their first NFT, they're just starting out. But it also includes people that have been around the space for 6 months, 12 months. They're a little more experienced. They know about art blocks. We're sort of watching art blocks drops. They're looking for alpha, they're degens, they're founders, they're builders, they're artists. And it's a little tricky to sort of build a community for both parties. Like on the one hand, we want to write in basic English and explain terminology. On the other hand, we're like degen minting some random project and all flipping it. And it's a little contrasting. So effectively what we're going to be doing is introducing a third tier, which we're calling the student tier. We're releasing student IDs. And this will be for beginners. The goal is for this to be everyone's first NFT. This is going to be a free mint. It's going to be soulbound. It's going to be unlimited. And this is going to be sort of the bottom layer, and eventually we want to onboard millions and just have everyone sort of have a student ID. And we're elevating the people who currently have a Zen Academy Genesis token into the PFP project, which we're really making that middle tier, that sort of the people that are a little more experienced, a little more serious about Web3. They want more advanced tools. They want access to maybe some analytics bots and stuff. They want to know what we're degen minting into. They want access to like founders calls and talking about, debates on royalties or revenue streams and stuff like that we have. And basically all the utility that we currently have as Zen Academy, we're like moving the large majority of it over to the PFP. And then we're just going to make the new tier, the student IDs sort of more basic and really tailored towards the beginners. So that's how we're doing it. And so tokenomics wise, we currently have 7,848 Genesis tokens. And because when we did the mint, it was an open edition for 2 weeks. So we had no direct control over the supply. And then we have 333 tokens, obviously. And when it comes to the PFP, we're giving 333 members 3 chests each, just as a nice little reward to them. Nothing too crazy. And 1-to-1 for the Genesis holders. That gets us to just under 9,000. And then because we're so close to 10K and 10K is a standard size, we are reserving 1,153 chests that those will be sold via a public, less public, more like an application process. But those will be sold by us as our way of generating revenue for the business without having to do a public mint for the rest of our holders. And so we can give a free mint to anyone that has a chest. And it's interesting because the higher, I guess, the floor price of the tokens, the more that we can justify charging for the chests because they're effectively exactly the same. So we're selling our supply, but we're doing it in a way where we have to do our job well, because if the floor price is very low, then we're not going to raise much revenue. But if the floor price is high and people believe in us and what we're doing, then we'll be able to generate more revenue. So I think it's an interesting model that I don't think has been done before. And yeah, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. How much do you run this stuff past your community as you're ideating on it? And how much do you announce it once you've made the decision?
Yeah, so there's a team of 4 of us like in the leadership position at Zen Academy, and we bounce all these ideas around a lot, and we've had 1,000 iterations and we came up with this. And then what we did was a week before we announced it, or 10 days before, we announced it to our internal teams. So that's all the moderators, and these are people that are, been part of the community and in other communities, and we got their feedback. And we actually adjusted our plans a bit based on that. And then we announced it to the wider community. And it was with the intention that, this is what we're thinking, but we're not 100% locked in. So if the feedback was negative, we have the flexibility to be like, you know what? All right, we're okay. We can pivot and make it a new decision. But I'm always a big fan of getting feedback from the community, but I also don't want to be constantly asking the community, what do you want? What do you think we should do? Because who do you even ask? Because a community of thousands of holders, everyone's going to have different agendas, opinions, and interests. And then B, sometimes people don't exactly know what they want and what's best for them. And sometimes you just have to do something.
You need to give people a firm plan to react to. And if it's like overwhelmingly negative, take that as like directional feedback. I think large crowds can be helpful for directional feedback. They're never going to be helpful for like setting forth a new plan, because you just 100%. Can't have that many voices collectively come up with a plan, that's concrete and specific.
Henry Ford's quote, if I asked people what they want, they would have said faster horses. So I think that, exactly. We wanted to come up with a firm, concrete plan, present it to the community, and then if the feedback was terrible, we would obviously go back to the drawing board, but it's been overwhelmingly positive. So we're really thrilled with where things are at right now.
I love this Soulbound thing. And I think I'm hearing increasingly, I feel like there was a phase where I was hearing about Soulbound tokens in a conceptual sense, and you had Vitalik talking about them, et cetera. And now I feel like I'm starting to hear them more and more in a practical sense. And I'm not going to say who publicly, because I don't know what has been said, but a mutual friend of ours I know is like looking at Soulbound NFTs for things and feels like it's a more scalable model for communities in some ways. Talk about why Soulbound made sense for this student ID tier that you're proposing.
Yeah, so maybe just quickly, in case people aren't aware, Soulbound basically just means that the token can't be sold or transferred. I believe Vitalik
it's
coined
tied
it.
to the very soul, your very soul. Isn't it like a video game reference?
It's from World of Warcraft. Yeah, and it stuck because it really allows for NFTs to be used in a way that completely eliminates the speculative and financial nature, which I think is really important in terms of going mainstream. And so you might wonder, sort of like, well, doesn't that sort of detract a little bit from like the pure ownership layer of NFTs? If you own it, you should be able to do whatever you want with it. But I think that there's a middle ground to be found with certain use cases. And so for us, for instance, we want to give these student IDs unlimited to anyone forever. And it makes zero sense for them to be able to be sold, because then if someone's selling one and someone's buying one, there's probably like almost the person buying it is making a mistake. And so there's this opportunity for someone to sort of say, hey, we've got these, maybe when we only have 100 of them, people are like, oh, there's only 100 of these student IDs for Zen Academy. I'm going to go buy one for 0.5 ETH or 5 ETH or whatever. But then maybe they don't realize that, well, these are free forever and unlimited. And it also sort of eliminates any sort of stress, any sort of, just the speculation disappears, and it allows people to have this token forever.
Is there some sort of chart your progress thing? Like, will it be malleable in the sense that like you can level up within it, or your stats as a student can sort of be recorded on there? And that would be another thing where you don't want people to be able to just like buy an A grade, that kind of defeats the purpose. Like you want to work towards, I don't know if you're doing grades or whatever you're doing, right?
We're looking at, 100%. We're looking at sort of like, we don't know exactly whether it's levels or like badges. I think like if you take a certain course, pass a quiz, pass a test, you get a badge, certificate, whatever indicated on the NFT itself. We're also, so the Soulbound token, they're going to be student IDs, and you can think of it as like any ID that you have where there's like a little, you have your image on it. So obviously in this space, PFPs. So we want to make it so that you can put your PFP, whether it's a Zen PFP or any other project, into your student ID, and then have that sort of representing you in the metaverse or you in the virtual world. And so there's some really cool stuff you can do. Just because it's Soulbound doesn't mean you can't do all sorts of fun tokenomics and technological things with it. And I think maybe even because it's Soulbound, you can do some more with it. So lots of good reasons. Yeah.
I'm almost surprised you didn't do a PFP sooner. I don't know if that was because, but it, you know, you could have just airdropped 721s to your holders or something. Like I think about Proof, obviously, I feel like pretty quickly, maybe I don't know how quick it was, but fairly quickly, certainly faster than you, because they were kind of after you and then launched a PFP before you, you know, saying we want people to be able to like, you know, identify who's in our community, and Moonbirds was born out of them being like the Proof NFT doesn't look good as a profile picture. And why did you wait a full year before launching PFPs?
Yeah, well, the reason we didn't launch in the first place was because the last thing the space needed was another PFP project. This was back in November last year. And so then like, why are we doing it now? Because there's been about 8 bazillion more PFP projects. And it's because I think similar reason to Proof, but our community is sort of like asking, they're like, hey, we would love a Zen PFP. We'd love to be able to represent ourselves on social media and have that identity piece and be able to see other people out on Twitter. And it's just like, it's just time. It's like, we took our time to make sure that we had demand from within the community and hopefully from without the community, and are wanting to do it in a way that's fun, that adds collectability. Like the art's going to be, I think, really, really fun and cool. And we're working with some pretty awesome artists as well to do things like special traits for the PFP project. And there's a lot that we can do there. But basically, yeah, I never felt like there was a pressing need or desire to do it early on. And then as time went on, the community started saying, hey, wouldn't this be cool? We would love one. And now it's like, okay, so now it kind of makes sense to do it. And let's figure out how to do it and do it right and do it in a way that adds value. So yeah.
COINSHIFT is a leading treasury management and infrastructure platform for DAOs and crypto businesses that need to manage their treasury operations. Every crypto org needs to manage its treasury, and COINSHIFT offers a simple, flexible, and efficient multi-chain treasury management platform built on top of the highly secure Gnosis Safe. With COINSHIFT, your organization can go from primitive single-chain treasury management to expressive, flexible, and multi-chain treasury features, such as global user management, global contacts, proposal management, and many other features that can be shared across an entire organization, allowing users to save time and reduce operational burdens and gas costs. COINSHIFT even has data tools like account reporting across the 7 chains on which it operates. Used by industry powerhouses such as Uniswap Grants, Balancer, Consensus, and Masari, COINSHIFT is speeding up the coordination and efficiency of the organizations that use it. You have to keep up with the frontier, and COINSHIFT makes that easy. So sign up at coinshift.xyz/bankless. We're all bullish on NFTs, but gaining exposure to NFTs as a whole is difficult. How are you supposed to gain broad, generic exposure to an industry that's designed to be unique and non-fungible? CRYPTEX has the answer. CRYPTEX Finance produces synthetic tokens that lets you get exposure to areas of crypto that you otherwise couldn't. Their first product, TCAP, provides broad exposure to the total crypto market cap of all crypto assets. And their second product, JPEGZ, gives you the ability to get exposure to the entire NFT market. It's the first real NFT index token, so you don't have to go hunting for rares or finding under the radar opportunities. You just need to own some JPEGs, because JPEGZ tracks all NFT collections with real-time exposure. This is a first-of-a-kind product from CRYPTEX, who has worked in close collaboration with Chainlink for months to ensure accurate price feeds for true exposure. Live minting and trading of JPEGs will open at the end of Q4, so make sure you stay up to date with CRYPTEX Finance by joining their Discord, Telegram, or following them on Twitter.
Shifting gears, you've been running an experiment on Twitter for, I don't know, months. It feels like a month. Okay. Where you're playing around with different tweet styles and formats, and you've been somewhat public about this, right? Like basically to see like what works best to get engagement, grow followers on Twitter. What have been the results of this experimenting? When 100K followers for Carly? What do I have to do, Zen?
Yeah. So the whole reason...
If Twitter still exists in a month, I don't know at this point.
Yeah. Who knows at this point? So I basically try to figure out how the algorithm works on Twitter, because... which kind of
Elon's
sucks.
also trying to figure that out.
Elon is... Well, that's the thing. No one actually knows. It's machine learning. It's all AI that runs these things. So Twitter actually has an ethical... I don't know if they still have it, an ethical oversight board that like looks into the decisions the algorithm is making and being like, are they being fair, or are they sort of like, is the algorithm favoring sort of one political party, or are they, I'm sure you know all about it. And anyway, so I decided to kind of just play around with different posting styles to see what worked best, what got the most engagement, what didn't. Because I'd noticed a few things over the course of the last year, 18 months that were sort of I would make certain posts and they get very low engagement, and others would pop off, and I was like trying to nail into why this was. And so basically for the month of October, I did a whole bunch of different posting styles where, to begin with, I would only post tweets from my main account, I think one a day maximum, and no responding to tweets, no retweets, nothing else, just to see how that went. And then I went in the other direction where I posted a lot more and replied to everyone. I did some where I would link to like my other content, linking to YouTube, linking to podcasts and things like that. Some where I didn't link at all, some where I retweeted, some where I didn't retweet. And basically linking to any external site is the worst thing you can possibly do on Twitter, and it makes sense because
That does make sense.
Yeah, Twitter's goal is to maximize engagement on Twitter. If you're sending people from Twitter to YouTube or to somewhere else, they hate that. They're not going to promote that tweet. So basically, you want to do as little external linking as possible.
Which sucks as a content creator because you're like, really I want you to go listen to my podcast, listen to my YouTube, and it's that eternal battle of like, do I mention it without the link so it gets more reach, but then nobody can easily find it, so most people won't ever end up going to it, or do I tweet it out with the link, get less reach, but at least it's easy access to go find my content? It's
terrible. It's really hard to get an audience from one social media platform to another because they make it really hard to do that. So yeah, there's no, I haven't found a silver bullet or a way around it, or that works tremendously well yet. I think to me, the most important thing for sort of maximizing engagement is being topical. And I think this is no surprise, but, and this goes for all sorts of content, whether it's YouTube videos, podcasts, or Twitter posts. But, the day the SEC fined Kim Kardashian, I wrote a thread and that like blew up because it was very topical. People were interested in it. And, if I made that thread 2 weeks later, it would have got a fraction of the engagement. And I think that the algorithm really looks at what people are talking about and then tries to highlight tweets that are sort of topical. I think retweeting is something I've gone back and forth on. I used to think it was bad. Now I think it's okay with the right frequency, which I don't know what that is. I'm planning on writing a big report with all my findings but the thing is, like, it's constantly changing. So what's right now might not be right in a week or two. But high level, I think, like, if you're trying to grow a following as much as possible, 1 to 2 tweets a day maximum, no external links, and make them sort of topical and insightful, and write things that add value to people's timeline. It's no rocket science, but that's kind of yeah.
And so, okay, 1 to 2 tweets a day, though, even that's helpful. Like, what is the right quantity? Because I'm not always the best tweeter, and I was hearing, that like, if you're not tweeting very often, they won't reward. You hear all the things, or they do pump your tweet when you finally tweet once or whatever. Okay, well, I will await your report. And
the other thing I'll say is that it's useful to think about your Twitter profile and timeline as like, think about what it is. Like, why are people following you? Are they following you for alpha on, DeFi drops? Are they following you on because you're sharing current news on the NFT space? And usually people will follow you for a reason. And then if all of a sudden you start posting other random stuff, it's so like people used to follow me for NFT stats, like daily floor price, and then threads, and then floor pieces. And then occasionally I would randomly tweet about like a movie I watched or what I had for dinner and stuff like that. And then it's like, cool, that's fun, but it's like, that's not really why people are following me.
Not why I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's the straddle between sort of content and like a lifestyle blogger basically. And I think maybe Instagram is a little more suited to like the lifestyle site, or like your stories and your sort of less permanent things are a little more suited for that. But when it comes to actual timeline content, I think you're better off sticking to a sort of a certain area. But again, this is if you're trying to grow a following and build a brand in that. If you just want to have fun, then go degen shit post, do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want.
Don't take it too seriously.
I want to talk about some of the projects you shouted out a year ago. This was on November 18th.
I'm super curious.
Get your thoughts on them today. So the first one you mentioned, I asked it during the podcast if there was any projects you thought were doing things right and you wanted to shout out. And the first one you said is Blitmaps. So that, I don't know if you want to give people an overview on Blitmaps or how closely you're following it, what you think of Blitmaps today. I can give some stats on it, which is I would say it's still doing pretty well. I mean, it has a 3 ETH floor, which at its peak, I think it had like a 30 ETH floor.
Yeah.
So it's down tremendously from its peak. But to be maintaining a 3 ETH floor is pretty impressive. You have a couple of sales in the last week, or whatever it's been. So it's not hyper liquid, but there is some activity still happening. So by all accounts, I feel like not a bad call out. I don't know I would love to know like how much you're tracking it still, how much you think about it still. I still think Dom Hoffman's obviously a very interesting character.
Yeah, I'm not super actively tracking it, but I still as bullish as ever on it. I think it's one of the most fascinating projects to me. They were, I think, the first project to go CC0, like with any sort of...
Yeah, they were very early on CC0.
Very early. And I always forget if it was them or Nouns that came first. I'm pretty sure it was Blitmap. And
Dom's involved in both. I think it was because Dom did Blitmap, CC0, and then was involved in Nouns, and then Loot was his other one.
Then
Loot,
and then Corruptions.
I think that was the order.
He's involved in so much. So yeah, I mean, Blitmaps have done well. They've actually they airdropped a second collection, Blit Noughts, that are like 2 ETH floor and a bunch of other things. So like price wise, given the bear, they've held up relatively okay. They raised, I think, a fairly large round of funding early this year, like 10 million, 12 million maybe. And they're building this massive thing called Supdrive and this massive universe, Blitverse. They're like true builders through and through. And I'm as bullish as ever on them. So yeah. Love
it. Good pick. You stand by it. It's also funny in the context we're in today, right? Dom, didn't he found Vine? Wasn't that his background? And now Vine might be making a comeback. Elon's like trying to get people looking back into Vine for Twitter, I guess. Okay, the second project you mentioned, which is funny because I don't know anything about this project, is Top Dog Beach Club. So I would love to get your thoughts on that. I also went and checked it out from a stats perspective. I think its peak was like 0.2 ETH. You were you threw it out as a project that you think was doing cool things, but that wasn't at a crazy price point. And it's now at like 0.04, which is not, as in percentage terms is way less down than Blitmaps is, for example. The other thing that blew me away about this was I was looking at it yesterday and there were like 5 sales within the last like 10 hours of me looking. So again, like still somewhat active. There's still totally liquidity. I mean, there was more liquidity arguably than in Blitmaps. Like there were more sales happening that had happened in the past week than in Blitmaps. So that also impressed me. Seems like it still has a somewhat active community. What do you think about this shout out you gave?
I still think it was great. Stand by it. Like the reason I shouted them out is because they're actually one of the first projects to have like a fully doxed team back when everything was anon. And I spoke to them, you could be in the Discord, you could tell that they were like real people turning up every day, building, like they were really smart, switched on. They were building, like they built a launch pad, they built really interesting mechanics with their off-chain token and their store and just a lot of stuff happening. They did a secondary collection as well, Top Cat Beach Club, I think, or Cats. But I mean, I'm sure they have like a small floor now, but it's, it was one of the projects that I thought was, maybe they suffered a little from being too real and too much like actual utility and like, all right, this is who we are, this is what we're doing. And they didn't lean into the whole speculative hype, we're going to be the next Disney type thing that some projects do. And maybe that's probably why they didn't go crazy in floor price. But I felt like there would be a project that would still be around a year from then, even if it wasn't, doing spectacularly.
Right.
They were a safer bet. Yeah.
They are still around, and yes, to their point, you have not lost much money if you bought into this, even at the peak. It's held up a bit. Okay, Curious Addys. Of course, we still feel warm and fuzzy around Curious Addys. 0.08 floor right now, which was around mint price. So I think held up relatively from around mint price. Peak was 0.75, so down. I mean, it's funny in some ways. Are you and Curious Addys almost competitors in the sense that you're both looking to kind of onboard new people into the space and be like the first NFT that people own, especially with you launching the student ID?
I mean, I guess so, but like I've literally never once thought of them as competitors. We're very much, we're just
you were an early advisor and
I was an advisor.
You really helped them a lot.
I made a small investment. They raised a small amount of money earlier this year. They did the contracts for the initial token, Zen Academy and 333. and we're using them for our contracts for all the PFP and the student aid and everything. They're just the best people I've ever met, Ben and Maya, the two co-founders, and they're doing such incredible things. They built this website called curious.xyz, where anyone can go and ask any question about Web3, and you'll get an answer within 12 hours. And they've now built this platform called Haymint, which is sort of their answer to, it was initially their answer to Premint, and they were like,
Premint.
Let's make Premint, but make it free for everyone. And then it's turned into a no-code platform for launching NFT collections, where now if you just want to launch a collection, if you want it to be soulbound, if you want all these advanced features, refund policies, staking, nesting, anything, you can just do it through their platform. And I think they just announced today maybe that it's in closed beta, and
I think I might be using Haymint. It's so funny. I didn't know Maya and Ben were behind it. I'm partnering with somebody for a project I have upcoming, and they've used Haymint. And I know Brendan well, so I'm like, I don't know, I'm kind of loyal to Premint.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize Ben and Maya were behind it. That's amazing.
Yeah. They're
very cool.
They're behind so much. They're superstars.
Yeah, they're both amazing. I agree. Okay, the last one aged very well. Artblocks. Yeah, of course.
Of course. I was like, if I didn't say Artblocks, something.
You'll spend your dying breath talking about Artblocks.
Yeah.
That'll be your tombstone. Will be like, was early in Artblocks.
Seriously, I've been shouting anyway. Yes, Artblocks is going well.
Artblocks is going very well. Anything more you want to expand? I mean, you and I have talked about Artblocks many times on this podcast, so.
It is just the best use case for NFTs I have seen to date in terms of collectibles, art. Just like, it's just the perfect merge of technology and art. And we're going to see other like quote unquote more real world use cases, but it's like the most interesting, the most exciting, the most digitally native, I would say, is probably the best way of putting it. And it's just don't get me started. I'll gush and rave.
We'll take up the rest of the podcast.
Yeah.
I just realized I should have worn my Zen Academy sweatshirt for this interview. It's a little warm in this room to wear it, but thank you so much. I have a Zen Academy sweatshirt now, and I'm wearing short sleeves because it's hot in here, but I should have worn it.
Oh, I'm glad you have it.
I'm looking at you wear it. I love it. It's great. It's so comfortable. It's you nailed it. So, okay. Of course, I have to ask now. Maybe we'll have you back again for an interview, a full interview in a year from now. What are the projects other than Artblocks that you want to shout out today in 2022?
I mean, it's got to be Artblocks. All right. Other than Artblocks, God, I'm so disconnected from the market now that I'm not as in tune. I'll say one that I really love, Terraforms by Math Castles. They're this really fascinating on-chain, just incredible project. They're so complicated and difficult to explain. I can barely wrap my head around them, but they're brilliant. They're like this on-chain 3D metaverse, digitally native thing that's constantly evolving. Again, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it, but Terraforms by Math Castles, let's see where they are in a year. I think they're at like 1.2 or 1.4 ETH floor right now. Obviously, I got to say Zen Academy and everything that we're doing, I'm inherently insanely bullish on, but that goes without saying. I'm a big fan and believer in Proof and Moonbirds and Oddities and everything that they're building. I love, I love the whole team over there, and they're doing awesome things. Gosh,
that's good. You just gave me 4.
Yeah.
Artblocks again, of course. Terraform, Proof, Zen Academy.
Yeah, there you go. Let's see where they are.
Yeah. You sound unconvinced that you have given me enough.
I feel like I should give you more, but that's I don't know. I just feel like I'm missing so many awesome projects, and I'm sure that I am, but such is life.
I know. It's the combination
Blitmap.
of like the
again.
You'll do Blitmap again.
Double down on Blitmap.
That's a funny one for you to have like just occurred to you since we were just talking about it.
I know.
Like you just
that's why I'm like, I feel like I'm forgetting
recesses.
things. I'm
the thing we just talked about
things.
22 minutes ago.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. I love it. I mean, I appreciate the consistency, like 2 out of the 4, you're shouting out again. And I know you still like the other 2. So, let's maybe close on let me ask you this. Is there a belief that you held, call it a year ago, or maybe when you first got into NFTs, that you no longer hold today? Because I'll say, listening back to our old conversation, you're remarkably consistent, right? Like you didn't like roadmaps then. And you, again, like you're like, we don't have a specific roadmap for Zen Academy, but we have, goals and high-minded ideals that we're going to build towards. Is there a belief that you feel like you had a year ago that you no longer do have?
I mean, definitely. I've changed and evolved a lot in my thinking over the last year. I think one thing I used to think was, I think I just massively underestimated marketing. And I thought if you build it, they will come. And to an extent, that's kind of true. But really, you need to build it. And then that's only 10% of the battle. It's really marketing, especially in this new age of attention and this attention economy and war and everything, not just in the NFT space.
You have to hit people over the head with stuff.
Yeah, so many times. So that's probably the biggest thing that shifted, is just like the importance of marketing, culture, community building. I have to give a lot of props to Emily, who is heads up marketing at Zen Academy and Zen Labs now. She has just taught me a lot over the last, 9 months, I think she's been with us, and just about marketing, brand, culture, the difference between marketing and advertising, and just sort of all of that is the biggest. Yeah, that's definitely the biggest thing.
Can you give us a couple examples of things you've done in service of now marketing or advertising that maybe came from Emily?
So probably the biggest thing is less, it's more about like culture and branding, I would say, so we had Zen Academy, but we didn't really know what Zen Academy was. What was the profile of Zen Academy? Who is the Zen Academy student member, the PFP holder? Who is the 333 member? Where does that all sit? And so she made me sit down and really write down like the values, the North Star, where are we going? What does it mean? And just to have this cohesiveness in the entire brand, so that even down to like the words that you use when interacting on social media, so that different team members are not, you don't want to be a sort of family-friendly project and then have people go out there talking, like swearing and talking about guns and violence and this, that, and the other. You want to sort of stay aligned to the same type of
coherent
culture. And even though like inherently I knew exactly what we were, it was really important and helpful to write it down and make sure that everyone understood and was on the same page. And that, I think, helps when it comes to branding and visibility. And the other big thing was just the importance of like the physical, like the visual branding. So like a logo, and like we updated our logo shortly after she came in, and just like consistency in color, and like purple is obviously a big thing. We have the crystal ball emoji now, and just keeping that thread running throughout everything we're doing to make sure that there's a brand really behind Zen Academy, Zeneca33, all of that, rather than just this disparate stuff. I was just like YOLOing it, like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It was very all over the place, and she really helped bring it all together and is helping so much in the next. Yeah.
Where did you find her? How did she come onto the team?
I'd seen her around, like just in random Discords and like crypto covens, and I think maybe one other project. But then she just cold DM'd me after reading my Infinite Regret newsletter and said, "Hey, this, thank you, this helped me." And we just got to talking, and it's actually at the time this was really early on. I hadn't really hired too many people, and I was drowning, and I was like, "Are you interested in, maybe coming to work? I could use some help. I need to sort of hire an assistant." And she was like, "Yeah, I'm really interested. Let's chat and see what I can do." And then we hopped on a call, and she was like, "Yeah, so currently I'm head of marketing at 1SC, this app. I've worked for Nike and da-da-da." I'm like, "Okay, so you're way overqualified for that. How about?" And then I didn't even realize that I needed someone to help with marketing, or that we needed someone. And then, yeah, just from there, it just, I think within a day she was joined us, and has just, been a tremendous help. Everyone on the team has.
Love it. Amazing. Zeneca, thank you so much for coming on and having this chat with me and sharing all your wisdom, and for everything you do for the space in general. You're, as always, just such a beacon of wisdom and light. And I'm so grateful to call you a friend and have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. As always, it's been good to be back on as I guess an interviewee.
As a guest. I guess you're a guest always. I don't know.
Yeah.
Full interview guest.
Yeah, it's been amazing. You got to show this is not going to come out for the week, for the dollar, but still got to show the documentary.
Oh, Puerto I guess Rico. It will. Oh, you're so sweet. Okay. Yeah, I should do it. I did it on the podcast that came out today, which is Friday, November 4th. But yes, if anybody has missed it, I shot a documentary in Puerto Rico in February of this year. It is out now. remains to be seen if you watch this, whether it will still qualify for the charitable aspect. We'll see if we extend that or not, or also just in general when people who listen to this watch it. But I am running something where for the first week or so, every view that the documentary gets, MetaMask, who's my partner and sponsor on it, or I will be donating $1 to hurricane relief efforts in Puerto Rico, up to $10,000. We were trying to raise $10,000 for hurricane relief funds in Puerto Rico, which is a really necessary cause. There was Hurricane Fiona hit about a month and a half ago. I think I've got that timeline right. And you have a lot of people who are still struggling to recover, struggling with food, electricity, gas, things they need. It's an island that just has been keeps getting punched in some ways, and they don't have the resources. There's a lot of government corruption to just bounce back immediately, and so they require a lot of it requires support from all of us. So anyway. Yes, and it's a cool documentary, and I highlight some amazing artists in it and amazing people. So, watch the first 5 minutes, get the view in, and then if you're interested in it, keep watching the whole thing, right?
Watch the whole thing.
Watch the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, really, I really want folks to meet these artists because I think they're just amazing people and really talented and just deserve some attention. So thanks for giving me an opportunity on my own show to shill it, Zen. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I think people
are going to be sick of hearing me talk about it. But cool. All right. Until next time, dude.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.